You know, there's something deeply unsettling about watching someone who had everything lose it all in the span of a few days. And I'm not talking about losing a job or a relationship. I'm talking about losing your identity, your name, your place in history. For years now, people have been going back and forth about Harry and Meghan. Some folks thought they were brave for leaving. Others thought they were entitled. But nobody, and I mean nobody, saw this coming. Not like this. Not with federal agents, sealed indictments, and a king who finally said enough is enough. So let me take you through what actually happened here, because this isn't just royal gossip anymore. This is a legitimate constitutional crisis, mixed with an international investigation that reads like something out of a political thriller. And the craziest part? It all started with a single raid in California that would end up changing the British monarchy forever. Picture this. It's the last day of January 2026. The sun's shining over Montecito, that fancy little California enclave where celebrities go to hide from the rest of us. Harry and Meghan are living in their mansion, probably thinking they're untouchable at this point. They've done their interviews, written their books, launched their foundations. They've built this whole new life across the pond, far away from the family drama. Then the FBI shows up at their door with a warrant. Not just any warrant, mind you, a sealed warrant. The kind that requires a federal judge to sign off on it because there's already enough evidence to suggest something seriously wrong has been going on. And when federal agents execute that kind of warrant, they're not there to ask questions. They're there to collect evidence they already know exists. Now, here's the thing about sealed warrants that most people don't understand. You don't just get one of those because someone filed a complaint or made an accusation. The process is incredibly deliberate. Investigators have to present probable cause to a judge. Real, documented, reviewable cause that proves evidence of a crime exists at the specific location they want to search. The bar is set high for a reason. So when those agents walked into that Montecito mansion, they already had a pretty good idea of what they were looking for. And apparently, they found it. Because less than 48 hours after that raid, word reached Buckingham Palace through official diplomatic channels, not through family phone calls or private conversations, through the UK Home Office. That's how you know this wasn't some minor misunderstanding. Within days, King Charles signed a document that effectively erased his own son from the royal family, not suspended him, not put him on leave. Erased him. The official paperwork doesn't even call him Prince Harry anymore. It calls him Henry Mountbatten Windsor. Just a regular guy with a fancy last name. Think about that for a second. Your own father signing a legal document that removes your title, your military honors, your place in the line of succession, everything that defined your entire existence up to that point. Gone. With a signature. So what exactly did the FBI find that was so damning it triggered this kind of nuclear response? Well, according to the reports that have leaked out, we're talking about 3 major categories of alleged wrongdoing, and each one on its own would be pretty serious. Together, they paint a picture that apparently the palace just couldn't ignore anymore. First up, there's the money trail. Investigators allegedly discovered that nearly $5 million had been moved out of the Archwell Foundation, the charity Harry and Meghan set up, and transferred into personal consulting companies linked to Meghan's commercial team. Now, if you're not familiar with how charities work, let me break this down simply. When people donate money to a charitable foundation, that money is supposed to go toward the charitable cause. It's not a personal piggy bank. It's not something you can just redirect to entities that have financial connections to the people running the foundation. That's not just ethically questionable. That's potentially illegal. Think about all those people who opened their wallets because they believed in whatever cause Archwell was promoting. Maybe they thought they were helping veterans or supporting mental health initiatives. And now there's an allegation that millions of those dollars ended up in accounts connected to the people running the show. That's not just breaking trust, that's breaking the law. But it gets worse. The second allegation involves technology, specifically a private encrypted server that was allegedly found inside their home. According to reports, this server was being used to store donor communications, identity verification documents, and correspondence with foreign entities, none of which was disclosed to either US or UK charity regulators. Here's why that matters. Regulators exist to make sure charities are operating above board. They're there to protect donors and make sure the organizations claiming to do good are actually doing good. But they can only do their job if they can see what's going on. When you deliberately hide information from regulators, information that's supposed to be subject to oversight, that's not an accident. That's a choice. And it's a choice that raises some pretty serious questions about what exactly you're trying to hide. Now, if those first two allegations made your eyebrows go up, this third one is going to make your jaw drop. Among the evidence allegedly uncovered by federal investigators were forged donor acknowledgments. At least 4 of them. And here's where this goes from financial misconduct to something genuinely disturbing. One of those forged documents apparently involved the signature of a deceased British veteran. A dead veteran's name was allegedly used to promote a fundraising campaign for the Invictus Games in 2023. Let that sink in for a moment. The Invictus Games. The whole point of that organization is to honor wounded military personnel, to celebrate their sacrifice and resilience. And someone allegedly forged a dead veteran's signature to raise money from donors who thought they were honoring military service. If that allegation is true, and we have to be clear these are still allegations under investigation, but if it's true, that's not just fraud, that's desecration. Which brings me to a question I genuinely want you to think about. Out of those 3 allegations, the missing millions, the hidden server, the forged veteran's signature, which one do you think is the most damaging? Not just legally, but morally. Because our answer to that question says a lot about how you see this entire situation. Now, the British royal family is not exactly known for moving quickly. This is an institution that has survived wars, scandals, abdications, and revolutions by being measured, deliberate, and strategic. They don't panic. They don't react emotionally. Every statement they make has been reviewed by lawyers, vetted by advisors, and calibrated with surgical precision, which is exactly why the speed of their response to these FBI findings should tell you everything you need to know about how seriously they took this. Princess Anne was the first to move. She called an emergency press conference, something that almost never happens, and her words were sharp and direct. She didn't sugarcoat anything. She said this wasn't a quiet removal. This was a constitutional and reputational response. The monarchy would not tolerate fraud, the distortion of military service for profit, or the unauthorized use of the crown's symbolic weight for personal enrichment. And then she said something that I think captures the entire moment perfectly. She said they were choosing national honor over familial silence. National honor over familial silence. That phrase is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Because what Anne is really saying is that they could have kept this quiet. They've done it before. The royal family has a long history of protecting itself through discretion and silence. But this time, they chose differently. This time, they decided that protecting the institution mattered more than protecting one of their own. Prince William followed up shortly after with his own statement. His words were brief, but they cut deep. He said no one is above the values of duty, transparency, and service. He said his father's decision was absolute. And then he added something that I think reveals just how personal this all is. He said it was his duty to defend these standards even when it costs him privately. That last part, even when it costs us privately, that's William acknowledging the pain of what's happening. This isn't just some distant royal he's talking about. This is his brother, the guy he grew up with, the boy who stood next to him at their mother's funeral. And William is publicly supporting the decision to strip him of everything. That tells you something about how serious the allegations must be. Behind the scenes, apparently William had been coordinating with intelligence agencies and law enforcement for months. He'd been working with the palace's legal team, the Metropolitan Police, building the case, gathering evidence, making sure everything was documented and airtight before any public move was made. This wasn't a knee-jerk reaction. This was a calculated, methodical dismantling that had been in the works for a while. And then came the final blow. King Charles himself signed Royal Order D-226. The document was countersigned by the Privy Council, the Lord Chamberlain, and the Keeper of the Royal Archives. It formally terminated the Duke of Sussex title, removed all references to Harry from international registers, disqualified him from the line of succession, and voided every ceremonial, diplomatic, and military appointment he'd ever held. The final clause of that order is something historians are going to be quoting for decades. It says, and I'm reading this directly, henceforth he shall be recognized neither in title nor in duty as a representative of the crown or of its historic lineage. That's not just removing someone from the family tree, that's erasing them from it entirely. But here's where the story gets even more intense, because what was happening behind closed doors before any of this became public is the kind of scene that legends are made of. 2 days before the public announcements, King Charles called a full house royal assembly at Windsor Castle. Every senior member of the family was summoned to the Crimson Drawing Room. Everyone except Harry and Meghan. The 2 people the meeting was about weren't even there. Princess Anne walked in carrying a red folder labeled Devolution Dossier, Sussex Declassification. William arrived with Catherine, who was dressed in simple navy, deliberately somber, symbolically serious. And at the head of the table sat King Charles, and reportedly, he'd already removed his signet ring. In the visual language of royalty, that's not random. That's a signal. Constitutional detachment had already begun. Anne opened the folder and started distributing redacted FBI reports, sealed audio transcripts, metadata logs, photographs from the federal operation. And what those documents allegedly revealed stunned everyone in that room. We're talking about an unlicensed offshore media fund registered in Meghan's name that listed multiple royal properties as legacy assets. Digital contracts outlining brand exploitation deals potentially involving photographs of the children, possibly violating the Windsor Accord on royal child protections. 3 encrypted hard drives containing emails that allegedly detailed plans to monetize internal palace records dating back years. William reportedly broke the silence first, his fists clenched. We warned him, we warned them both. But Harry didn't just sell the family, he sold the institution, and he used our children to do it. Princess Anne's response was short and final. He is no longer to be treated as Windsor-born. The shield no longer protects him. And then King Charles spoke, and when he did, the room went completely silent. We protected them with silence, he said, and they returned it with a playbook of betrayal. That line right there, that captures everything. Years of restraint, years of choosing quiet over confrontation, and in the king's view, that silence had been weaponized against the very institution that extended it. Now I want to ask you something, and I genuinely want to know what you think. Do you believe the palace waited too long to act? Or do you think waiting until they had federal evidence, documented proof, irrefutable grounds, was actually the smarter strategic move? Because that's one of the most important questions in this entire saga. But here's where this story stops being just about family drama and becomes something with genuine national security implications. On February 2nd, there was a confidential briefing at the Cabinet Office briefing rooms, known as COBR. That's the facility where the UK government manages its most serious national emergencies. Terrorist attacks, pandemics, major crises, and they convened COBR over evidence obtained from a residential search in California. Think about that. That tells you something about the scale of what was allegedly found. The briefing included the Home Secretary, the Director of GCHQ, the Chief of MI5, and representatives from the Royal Household Security Division. The FBI's evidence had been formally classified as security relevant and institutionally destabilizing. According to the official communiqué released after that meeting, the evidence bundle included digital communications, metadata, encrypted transfers, and 3 sealed testimonies obtained under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Here's where it gets really serious. The documents allegedly revealed that Harry had knowingly received material assistance, both financial and logistical, from a foreign lobbying group with undisclosed ties to sovereign adversaries of the United Kingdom. We're talking about entities registered in the Seychelles and the UAE that were traced back to front organizations designed to influence UK media narratives and gain backdoor access to confidential briefings involving Veterans Affairs, royal ceremonial planning, and UK-US diplomatic initiatives. And then there was the discovery that really sent shockwaves through British intelligence. Harry had allegedly contracted a Dubai-based digital firm under a non-disclosure agreement for what was presented as cloud storage optimization. Sounds innocent enough, right? Except forensic analysis by British and American cyber experts revealed that this firm had been exporting, replicating, and cross-indexing privileged communications involving royal scheduling, military patronage negotiations, and classified institutional planning. Among the files that were exposed, military routing schedules, royal household cybersecurity protocols, archived correspondence dating back to Queen Elizabeth's post-exit Commonwealth meetings. One high-ranking royal aide, speaking anonymously, said something that really captures the magnitude of this. "This isn't betrayal," they said. "It's a cathedral built on stolen keys." That phrase is going to stay with people for a long time. In the hours and days that followed that COBR briefing, William and Anne moved with precision and speed. William filed a formal declaration of legal disassociation from his brother with the Royal Household Legal Affairs Registry. The document revoked all previous informal agreements regarding shared royal representation, armed protection, crossover rights, and access to the Royal Military Family Fund. The public version stated clearly that effective immediately, the Prince of Wales would no longer maintain any joint charitable, ceremonial, or logistical association with Prince Henry Charles Albert David. All previous standing privileges, courtesies, and cooperative engagements were hereby nullified. At the same time, Princess Anne executed a clause in the Royal Institutional Discipline Charter that hadn't been invoked since 1972. This clause allows for the formal excommunication of any blood member whose actions are deemed systemically corrosive to the institution's integrity and security. This wasn't temporary. This was permanent. Meanwhile, Catherine made a rare public appearance at Windsor Chapel. She didn't mention recent events directly, but her final words resonated with unmistakable precision. "It is not the crown that defines character," she said, "but the conscience that honors it." The crowd gave her a standing ovation. And observers noticed she was wearing Queen Elizabeth's sapphire and diamond brooch, historically associated with moral clarity and continuity. That brooch had been passed to her in a private ceremony by King Charles back in December, a symbolic transfer that, in hindsight, looks like deliberate preparation for this exact moment. On February 6th, King Charles approved what the palace called the Order of Erasure, a 5-page decree permanently removing Harry's style of Royal Highness and revoking his lineal coat of arms from all official heraldic registries. A smaller clause, added at William's request, banned the use of Royal Sussex in any digital or commercial format, enforceable under international intellectual property treaties. The final line of that order reads like something out of a medieval decree. "By command of the Crown, the line that turned against the House shall hold no title, no token, and no shield." Now, no story this big comes without complications. And in this case, there's an unexpected wrinkle involving Queen Camilla. Her name appeared twice in the FBI's redacted timeline. Not as a perpetrator, but as what investigators called an unwitting enabler. Back in November, her son Tom Parker Bowles attended a private gathering at the Montecito estate with 3 unidentified foreign investors. Leaked hotel records showed these individuals arrived under diplomatic aliases and met behind closed doors for over 4 hours. Camilla, reportedly unaware of what was really going on, had allegedly encouraged the gathering because she thought her son was pursuing some kind of culinary diplomacy initiative. She'd even sent a case of vintage Bordeaux labeled Buckingham 1961. The optics, as one source put it with considerable understatement, were disastrous. By February 6th, Camilla was forced to issue a personal statement saying she regretted the incident and requested her son temporarily suspend all engagements involving royal endorsement. Tom Parker Bowles was quietly removed from all royal charity boards the same afternoon. Social media erupted with hashtags. Small protests appeared outside Clarence House. and Camilla's absence from subsequent advisory sessions sparked speculation about her diminished influence within the palace power structure, especially as Catherine and Anne emerged as the dominant institutional voices in this post-Harry era. So, what happens now? Let's be precise about what has changed and what changes next. Harry's digital erasure from royal registers, court rolls, and ceremonial listings was completed at midnight on February 6th. The official royal website has removed all references to his former titles, patronages, and military honors. The court circular, which is the official journal of royal engagements, now lists him as Henry Mountbatten Windsor with no designation attached. The roles he's lost include Honorary Air Commandant of RAF Honington, Captain General of the Royal Marines, Patron of the Rugby Football League, all Commonwealth Trust ambassadorial duties, and the right to use the HR styling in any ceremonial or philanthropic setting. The titles that his children Archie and Lilibet had been given were declared void in formal court filings, citing misuse of monarchical identity. On the legal front, British prosecutors have submitted a notice of intent to investigate under the Proceeds of Crime Act regarding Harry's undeclared offshore holdings. In the United States, the IRS and the Department of Justice have opened inquiries into possible tax evasion, illicit asset shielding, and false statement filings. The FBI has reportedly forwarded a sealed indictment to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Central District of California. Multiple streaming platforms and publishers have paused negotiations related to content involving the Sussexes, citing reputational risk. Former executives have been subpoenaed as cooperating witnesses, and Meghan, whose name appears frequently in the FBI warrants appendix, hasn't been charged with anything yet. But sources close to the palace indicate that further disclosures relating to her financial management activities are pending review by U.S. prosecutors. A nationwide poll conducted on February 5th found that 79% of respondents supported King Charles's decision to revoke all of Harry's titles. 85% believe Meghan should no longer be referred to with any royal styling, and over 91% said the monarchy was right to protect its legacy from further exploitation. Whether those numbers reflect permanent public sentiment or just the immediate heat of a breaking news cycle, only time will tell. But what they signal about the current relationship between the British public and the House of Windsor is unmistakable. The institution's credibility hasn't just survived this crisis. By choosing transparency over familial silence, it may actually have been strengthened by it. And Harry, the man who was born a prince, raised for a life of service, fought in 2 tours of Afghanistan, married in one of the most watched ceremonies in television history, and then walked away from all of it. Where does he stand now? Not in succession, not in title, not apparently in his family's trust or protection. He's reportedly attempting to make quiet phone calls to the palace that are going unanswered, reportedly fighting with the woman he gave everything up for, mostly about money, reportedly distancing himself from her decisions, including attempts she allegedly made without his full knowledge. The order of erasure has been signed. The decree is final, and its last words are now part of the historical record of the British monarchy. By command of the Crown, the line that turned against the House shall hold no title, no token, and no shield. So here's what I want from you, and I mean this genuinely. I want your complete, honest, unfiltered reaction. Do you think King Charles made the right call? Do you believe the FBI allegations as they've been reported? Do you have sympathy for Harry? Or do you think he made his choices and is now facing the natural consequences of those decisions? And maybe the most important question of all, do you think there's any version of this story where things could still turn around for him? Because right now, with the decree signed and the gates shut, the ending doesn't look like a fairy tale anymore. It looks like a verdict. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Share this if you think people need to hear the full story laid out like this. And hit that subscribe button because this saga is far from over. The investigations are still ongoing, the prosecutors are still moving, and the next chapter is already being written. We'll be here when it breaks. Investigate under the Proceeds of Crime Act regarding Harry's undeclared offshore holdings. In the United States, the IRS and the Department of Justice have opened inquiries into possible tax evasion, illicit asset shielding, and false statement filings. The FBI has reportedly forwarded a sealed indictment to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Central District of California. Multiple streaming platforms and publishers have paused negotiations related to content involving the Sussexes, citing reputational risk. Former executives have been subpoenaed as cooperating witnesses. And Meghan, whose name appears frequently in the FBI warrants appendix, hasn't been charged with anything yet. But sources close to the palace indicate that further disclosures relating to her financial management activities are pending review by U.S. prosecutors. A nationwide poll conducted on February 5 found that 79% of respondents supported King Charles's decision to revoke all of Harry's titles. 85% believe Meghan should no longer be referred to with any royal styling. And over 91% said the monarchy was right to protect its legacy from further exploitation. Whether those numbers reflect permanent public sentiment or just the immediate heat of a breaking news cycle, only time will tell. But what they signal about the current relationship between the British public and the House of Windsor is unmistakable. The institution's credibility hasn't just survived this crisis. By choosing transparency over familial silence, it may actually have been strengthened by it. And Harry, the man who was born a prince, raised for a life of service, fought in 2 tours of Afghanistan, married in one of the most watched ceremonies in television history, and then walked away from all of it. Where does he stand now? Not in succession, not in title, not apparently in his family's trust or protection. He's reportedly attempting to make quiet phone calls to the palace that are going unanswered. Reportedly fighting with the woman he gave everything up for, mostly about money. Reportedly distancing himself from her decisions, including attempts she allegedly made without his full knowledge. The order of erasure has been signed, the decree is final, and its last words are now part of the historical record of the British monarchy. By command of the Crown, the line that turned against the House shall hold no title, no token, and no shield. So here's what I want from you, and I mean this genuinely. I want your complete, honest, unfiltered reaction. Do you think King Charles made the right call? Do you believe the FBI allegations as they've been reported? Do you have sympathy for Harry? Or do you think he made his choices and is now facing the natural consequences of those decisions? And maybe the most important question of all, do you think there's any version of this story where things could still turn around for him? Because right now, with the decree signed and the gates shut, the ending doesn't look like a fairy tale anymore. It looks like a verdict. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Share this if you think people need to hear the full story laid out like this. And hit that subscribe button because this saga is far from over. The investigations are still ongoing, the prosecutors are still moving, and the next chapter is already being written. We'll be here when it breaks,